off-plan meals on a deficit, but still losing weight. That is something that comes up a fair amount, especially if the meal plan is a little bit on the low energy side. Now, I'm a massive advocate on the longevity program of high calories, high output. But sometimes life comes up and sometimes blokes are left wanting, especially with, family barbecues and date nights and stuff like that, right? I'm going to talk specifically about off-plan meals and making sure that you do them properly, right? Because there's a few different ways you can do them. And the typical way in the industry would be to save calories up during each day and then give yourself a large surplus potentially on a weekend. For example, Monday to Friday, you save 200 calories up, and then on Saturday, you have an extra 1,000 calories on top of your normal daily allocation. I don't like doing that because by cutting yourself short during the week, you're going to reduce performance. On my program and the way I eat myself and the way I'm coached to eat myself is always have food as high as possible so that performance is as high as possible for as long as possible. The last thing you want to be doing is undercutting food because you start looking left and right and you start developing bad intentions, right? So the problem I have with that approach is that doing that reduction of food, you don't just get the emotional benefit of that 1 day tick, you've now got 5 days of misery in order to satisfy that requirement. That is a terrible idea, right? There's a better way we can do it. The second thing, right? The second way people usually do this is they usually like to go without all day and then on an evening eat their off-plan meal in one go, right? And there's a problem with this as well because you're just absolutely starving, right? And when you're absolutely starving, your body craves some really fucking bad food choices. When you've had an extended period of time, the food that you're usually going for is the foods that you're lacking. And in that day, it would be everything. So your body's going to want fat, it's going to want protein, it's going to want carbs, everything in one go as fast as possible, right? Your choice is probably not going to be the greatest. My personal recommendation on this front, right, is make sure, if you're going to do this, right, if you must do this, make sure your week is aligned so that this, let me just check, we're still going, so this meal is aligned with a rest day, right? The reason aligning it with the rest day is better is because that we don't need to worry about performance on that day, right? So by not having to worry about performance, we don't need to worry about having carbohydrates before the session and after the session, and other niff-naff and trivia things that are key to high performance during the day. So we can have that, that social setting, that meal with family, with friends. But the way I do it and the way I recommend doing it, right, is waking up. And I recommend this point as well. I'll give you a little side nugget. Your breakfast, your first meal, not like specifically breakfast because I think water and coffee isn't breaking your fast. So your first actual meal should be pushed back as far as possible in the day, right? If you're on, unless you're training, that's a separate issue. But if you train at noon or on an evening, push your first meal back as far as possible because us men can go a long period of time at the first part of the day without food, without making any stupid decisions. However, when it gets to this type of time on a night and we have no food that we need to eat and we've got to get to sleep, virtually impossible. So we can manage our hungry bellies on a morning with water, with coffee, and we're absolutely golden, right, for as long as possible, and we actually enjoy that feeling of being hungry, that predatory, mode or whatever you want to call it. So push your first meal back as far as possible. On your rest day, noon, 1, 2, 3 p.m. Make sure that meal is a very high satiating meal and a very slow digesting meal. Don't have any carbohydrates. Beef and eggs, preferably lean beef and preferably boiled eggs, right? That will take fucking ages to digest, and that will take you all the way up to your evening off-plan meal. In most cases, I recommend on the lads on my program, and what I'm gonna have tomorrow is 200 grams of ground beef, 4 or 5 eggs, right? And I'm gonna have that as late as possible. And tomorrow night, I'm gonna have some sushi. It's virtually impossible to go overboard on my calories while I'm eating sushi. Now, I'm gonna tell you the reason why I'm having sushi, and I'm gonna tell you the reason why having other options may be a bad idea. So when I was talking earlier on about you don't have your training to worry about if you do it on a rest day, sometimes if you make a terrible decision on a rest day, the consequence of that often trickles over into your next day, which is training day. Do you know what I mean? So if you add loads of meat, not much carbohydrates, you starve yourself all day, your energy the next day, the next morning is going to be pretty dreadful. So you're going to have like a food hangover. So tomorrow, as I say, I'm going to do beef, eggs as late as possible, run coffee, and I'm going to work and have plenty of water in the morning. But I'm going to have sushi on the night. And the reason I'm going to have sushi on the night is because I can tick the social box. Rice and fish, tick the social box. I can physically not consume, 5 or 6 rolls of sushi. So I can stay in that deficit and still continue to lose weight and get to that 10% body fat, which is a current mission of mine. Hopefully that gives you a few things to think about regarding having off-plan meals in a strategic way, right? Just to summarize it all up. Try and have it on a rest day. Try not to cut calories daily, because that'll cut performance daily for one emotional outburst on a weekend. Try not to do that. Always have one eye on tomorrow. How is eating this going to affect my energy levels tomorrow? Remember, there will be a food hangover if you choose dreadful foods. You can still get a lot of satisfaction from sushi. Gentlemen, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Out and about today. A late one from me, but I needed to get it in because I said I would yesterday. See you tomorrow.